I'm going to show you how to build this incredible windmill here in Lego Fortnite. And yes, the one we'll be focusing on, which you're seeing right now, is using free parts in the game, no bundles required. However, if you like the look of this red and white one, I did use the brand new Anarchy Acres bundle. So if we can get 500 likes on today's video, I will be gifting 2 people down in the comments the brand new Anarchy Acres bundle. So make sure you like this video and comment down below to let me know what are you most excited about for the future of Lego Fortnite. First up, we're going to start with the 16 by 16 by 2 wooden foundation, and we're just going to build a 2 by 2 square. That way we have a nice starting point to build this thing up. I also recommend finding a nice flat open area to get this thing started. So for the first pattern we're looking at right here, I'm not going to show you me putting down every block. I think it's much easier to just explain by looking at this shape and understanding the counts of these blocks. Now, if you're wondering what we're using, this is a free part called the Umber Wall in the wall section under building parts. And now the wall I'm currently standing on, you're starting out from this block here. We're actually going to put 6 of them across. So let me demonstrate exactly what that looks like. So for example, if these weren't already down, if you take a look at the red blocks, or actually let me nudge it forward, the green, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And then to connect our next set, all you really need to do is join them at the corners here. So let's get a little bit of a better angle so you can understand what I'm talking about. And if you look at the black highlighted block there, the corners are touching, and we're just gonna drop 1 there, a second one touching corners again, and for this third one that we're gonna be putting down, that's gonna be the start of our next row of 6. We'll repeat the pattern and just build another wall of 6 and do the same thing all the way around until you have a complete circle like the pattern I'm showing you right here. So I'm gonna just stop here for a second so you can have a moment to take a look at this and get this thing down pat before you move on to the next layer. Although I'm demonstrating this build in Sandbox, I have done this in Survival, and you're absolutely going to want to build some stairs on both sides, maybe even the back side of this thing as you build up, so you can really see what's going on. So once you have the stairs down, we're going to grab this Pleasant Park White Wall 1, where we're going to start to stack a new layer up in the center here. Now, before we had 6 blocks down, so what I recommend doing is starting it on the edge of those 6 and nudge it over 2 and nudge it back 1. We're going to start to build a wall of 4 of these, and the reason we're nudging them back is because as you move up, each layer is going to start getting a little bit smaller, okay? Now the next thing we're gonna do once you have your row of 4 in is snap it in, and we're just gonna nudge it back 1 space. Now if you see if I do 2, it's gonna turn red, so it's automatically gonna let you know when you're not doing it the way you should. So again, line it up with the edge here and nudge it back 1, and we're gonna do the exact same thing on the opposite end. Now we'll do something very similar here where we're gonna snap into that last block we just put down, and we're gonna nudge it back 1 space just like that. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So connect and then nudge back. And then for this one, we're going to connect and we're going to nudge back 1, 2 spaces. And the same thing over here. We're going to snap in and then 1, 2. And now we've got the first face of the second layer done. And as you can see, you're going to want the pattern to look like this. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute and walk around. You can see that the brown blocks underneath have a nice even pattern where it's starting to become exposed as we build up the second layer. Now for this next layer, the pattern's gonna be slightly different, but the same thing, we're gonna actually connect this piece to the one we just laid down, and we're gonna nudge it forward 1 space. Again, the rule of thumb is here, every time you build a layer up, you're just gonna wanna have a half of a nudge, or a half of a block, I should say, exposed from the layer underneath it. Now that we have that first block in, we're gonna count these. The first one we already just put down is gonna be 1. We're gonna do 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Now here is the wall we just put down of 5 of these walls. Now we're going to move to the other side and do the same thing. Now we're going to grab the same exact white walls. We're going to connect to this part here, and we're going to nudge it forward 1 and drop that down. So that would be 1. Now we're on 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Now it's time to follow the first pattern we did with the second row, which is finding the outside of the brown walls underneath, and then we're going to nudge over 1, 2, and nudge back 1. Now if you look here, you can see that outermost block in this front row of 6 that we first laid down, which is the brown umber walls on the bottom. You're going to skip the first one because we're going to do the same thing where we just start to connect these together to create a nice wall of 4. So that would be 2, 3, and our 4th block. And now you can see, again, just like the first pattern, we have two of the main ones on the bottom exposed. And we're going to connect here on the outside, and we're going to nudge it back one. We're going to connect again, and we're going to nudge back one. And then finally, we're just going to place this one in here, and we're going to nudge back 2 spaces. Now we're going to repeat the same pattern on the other side. So again, snap in, nudge back 1, snap in, nudge back 1, and then finally snap in and nudge back 2. So I'm going to chill up on top of here just for a second so you can soak in this pattern. Now this does get a little tricky at times, so feel free if you need to pause or rewind, but I'm just going to show you again. This is exactly how it should look. Now at this point, I think you get the patterns. We're going to continue to do this for 2 more layers until we start building out the gearbox and the fans and roof of this thing. But I'm just going to leave you with some clips. And as reference to, the next layer is going to be the umber walls, followed by the final layer before we build out all the mechanicals is going to be those white walls. So just take a look at these clips of me building out these next layers. If you need some assistance, you can watch this. If you've got the pattern down, feel free to skip ahead. After completed this next layer, here's another quick snapshot of what the pattern looks like. So I'm just gonna hold this here for a second so you can soak this one in again and take your time, because again, sometimes this could be a little tricky getting this consistency to pan out, even when you follow a tutorial like this. All right, now we're gonna move back to the white walls and just continue to follow these patterns like we've been doing all along, and you should be just fine. Again, skip ahead if necessary, or stick around and watch me finish out this last layer. Now, if you follow these patterns all along, this is what it should be looking like. You have a nice, good, consistent pattern. It's all the way around the 4th and final layer. Now, if you can look over here, it's time to start building out the gearbox, the roof, and the actual fan blades, which is going to look awesome. Now that we've got our 4th layer of this structure in place, we're gonna grab this rustic wide floor too, and we're just gonna get it positioned to where you can see the little ledge that I'm currently standing on. You want that on all 4 sides of this thing. So once you've got that lined up, we're gonna snap that bad boy down. And now so what I recommend doing next is building a different style floor piece around the outside for a working space. This is not gonna remain on this build, but it's just simply to keep us from falling off as we build these next components. And I use a different color simply so that we can find the center point with absolutely no problem. Now we're gonna build out what I call the cradle using the 4x4x2 wood foundation blocks. And the thing we're gonna make sure of here is that we're lined up with the front, and then we have one nice set of blocks off to the left there. You wanna make sure that you are not over on the outer edge like this. We want it just like that. And we're just gonna put 3 of these across. And then once we've got those in, all you need to do is stack 2 more on each side, just like I'm showing you now. And then from here, what we're gonna need to do is move over into the building toys, and then we're gonna grab these smaller wheels like this, and we're just gonna get them lined up on the bottom here, sandwiched right next to each other, just like this. And then we're gonna also do the same thing on the front end. We're just gonna line them up towards the bottom, nudge them in to where the center point of where these 2 wheels are touching are right up the center of this block here. Now from here, what we're gonna do is make our way over into our wall section, where we're gonna grab just any wall. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna put this dine-in wall. It doesn't matter, again, any wall will work. We're just gonna nudge this back to where we're lined up right on the other side of this wood floor here, where we're just gonna be completely on this granite piece. And then from here, what we're gonna do is put up a second wall right on the outer edge here. Shout out again to Kaboom for this technique. This thing works very, very well. And then all we need to do is put a large dynamic foundation to where it's going to actually tip off the edge here. So You don't want to go too far because it will fall on your cradle that we built just a moment ago, but we want to make sure we're a little bit further than center point. Now what happens is these things will not attach, so you can just simply push this thing up into the corner. And now you want to be a little bit gentle with it. Sometimes these things go flying and it's very frustrating to have to reset this multiple times. So just be careful when you're pushing that into place. With the dynamic platform locked into place, we're going to grab another 4x4x2 foundation block, and we're going to just hit snap mode to find our center. We're going to place that down just like that. Now before you move forward, just make sure it is nice and centered up on here and directly between this cradle we just built. Now the next thing I did, because I noticed that occasionally this dynamic foundation will actually weight and fall forward when we put our arm on, so you could put just any like corner wall, just make sure it's not touching the dynamic foundation. And what this is going to do is it's going to hold it in place so it doesn't fall forward, because we don't want that happening just yet. And then once you got that ready to go, we're going to grab this 2x2x12 umber wall. We're going to get it centered up here on this foundation piece that we just put down. We're going to snap it into place. Now what you'll see is this is starting to lean forward slightly. That's exactly why we put this piece in here, because otherwise this would have fell forward and we would not have been able to get this piece in properly. Next comes down to personal preference. Quite honestly, I enjoy using these 4x4x1 floor pieces. So if you like that too, you could also use an 8x8x1. I think these are a little bit too large for this structure, but mess around with these. Either one works fine as long as you have it centered on the top of your post. Now you're going to make sure you have it nudged into place properly. And then once you have that good and center, just go and check to make sure that you have an even number of blocks around the outer edge, because it's going to be important for the weight balancing of the front part. And now once we have all this stuff in, it's just going to be as simple as knocking out this stuff, including your dynamic foundation. Now you'll see that this thing just locks right into place between those wheels. So clean up all the walls around the outer edge. And then at this point, we're ready to place down our additional wheels. Next, we're going to take the small, simple wheels. Again, we're just going to simply place another set of 2 directly above the ones we placed down previously. And we're going to do that on the back and the front. Now, what you'll notice is this thing is kind of shaking, maybe making a little bit of noise, but that's okay, because once we get the actual fan blades on, it's going to stop that altogether. Now, before we get the blades on, however, we want to get this thing pushed forward just slightly like that. So that way we have enough clearance up on the front end to get this thing built out. Now, I've built about 4 of these, and every other one has had this front arm starting to droop like this. So if that's happening to you, all you need to do is grab this granite foundation block. It's the 4x4x2, and we're just going to snap 2 of those on the back. What this does is it creates additional weight, and it starts to lift the front end. Now you can see, as it was before, it is now much more straight, and this is going to help us when we put the fan blades on the front as well. Next, I actually knocked out the floor piece that's hanging right underneath this arm that we just put in place. So go ahead and do that. And now we're going to grab rustic thin floor 4, and we're going to snap 3 pieces in. This is going to be the surface in which we build our casing around. We don't want these parts exposed. That would look quite silly. So we're going to build a box around this. To build the casing, we're going to use the umber half wall, and we're just going to nudge it until we are as close to the arm as we can possibly get. So I always like to say, turn it red and then nudge it back 1. And then we're going to move it close to the wheels just like that until it turns red, and then nudge it forward 1. Now, we're going to just continue to build these across to the outer edge there, and then we're going to start to line up this rustic floor underneath until we have a complete box of these all the way around. Occasionally, you'll get to this point and you will not be able to place a floor piece down. So if that does happen to you, all you need to do is push this forward a little bit to get that thing out of the way. And then you can simply go back to your umber half walls and continue to build out the perimeter. Now, if you follow the perimeter of the floor piece, you should have a nice clean box all around the mechanical parts in the center. So we can get this thing covered up and have it looking a lot better. Now, once you've got that good to go, we're just going to go back to this rustic thin floor 3, and we're going to start to create a box around the outer edge. Once you have that box complete, you can move back to the larger rustic wide floor 2, and you can start to cover this thing up using this as well as some of the thin floor pieces to cover up that back part. Now, you could have probably done this part earlier in the video, but I decided to do it last minute. So we're going to knock out this back block here, and then we're going to build out this piece a little bit further out. That way we're good and centered on this thing when we build up. So what we're going to do is just grab another rustic thin floor 4, and we're going to set 1, 2, 3 of them back like we did previously. And then we're going to put some additional umber half walls in here. So we're just going to line them up just like we did before until you reach the other edge. And we're going to place down just one more row of these along the back. Then just cover it up with some rustic thin floor pieces. To set our post for our roof, we're going to find the front corner and we're going to nudge it over 4 spaces. And we're going to make our way up here towards the back where we're going to nudge forward only 2 spaces. Now, the easy way to get this centered up is just simply lock it in and just nudge it on over so that all of the posts that you have across from one another are lined up perfectly. For the roof pieces, you can get experimental, but what I think works best on this particular design is going to be the medieval roof 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to snap this on top just like this. We're going to start to nudge it over once the game allows us to. And then we're going to get it lined up to where both corners are meeting the outside edge. And then we're going to nudge it forward one just like that. So now that we've got that good and even up top, this next part's going to be simple. We're going to take the same roof piece and we're just going to snap it on the back. And now you've got this good centered up roof up on top. Now we're going to make our way back to roof parts and we're going to grab these roof gables. So we can start with the right or the left, and we're just going to simply jump in here and snap these in. We're going to come to the other side and do the same. And then once you've got in the rights, we're going to grab the left gables and put those on as well. Now, in my opinion, this part here looks a little strange. So what you can do to beef this up is go into your supports under beams, and we can grab these larger rustic beams. We can start to place these underneath. I believe you're going to use this rustic beam 3 that you're seeing here. We're going to snap that in, and then we're going to grab the smaller part and snap that right on the back. So we're going to grab a 2. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So line it up with the back end and put the rustic beam 2 in, and then grab rustic beam 3 and just snap it in just like that. So yeah, now you can see it looks a lot better having that covered up, and it just really beefs it up and gives it a lot more detail on the top. Now, what you can do as well is grab this rustic beam 3 and you can just simply fit this in the front end as well as the back end to cover up any unnecessary pieces that you don't want showing. That covers up all of the granite and it just gives it an overall much cleaner look. Next, we're going to grab the 4x4x2 wood foundation blocks and we're going to center them up right in the middle of this roof that we just put in, and we're going to stack 2 of them on top of each other. Now from here, what I recommend doing is putting a light of your choice on top of here. In this case, I'm going to use this courtyard lantern. I really like the look of this one, the steel on it, and it gives off a really good vibrance of light at night for this thing to set it off. Now that we're done up top here, let's go and break off these ugly castle floors. We do not want these hanging off our beautiful windmill whatsoever. Now, where the front end is, where your blades are gonna go, you're gonna open up this space here to where we can fit in a door. Now, personally, my favorite door on this build is going to be a part of the Shogun set, which is the Palatial Door 1. Now, let me get this thing locked into place here and show you how cool this thing looks. It blends in very well with the rustic walls as well as just the overall color scheme. The only problem is if you choose to use the medieval roof, it does clash with that green and that granite a tad bit. Now, the other thing you can do is just experiment with different roof types and door combinations, but for this build, we're gonna go with this. You can also use some of the rustic doors as well. I just find this one to be the best overall fit. Now let's add what I think makes this the coolest looking structure it can be, and that is going to be the fan blades on it. So what we're going to do now is start to build a staircase up to where we can actually reach this thing. Now, building these from the top was a little bit difficult, so I definitely recommend putting up some stairs to where you're good and centered and right in front of this thing. Now, this next part gets a little tricky because it is pretty shaky and is going to be challenging to get these to snap in the right way. Sometimes it works like you're seeing now, and other times it actually flips back and forth. So what we're going to do is just start with the rustic thin floor 4, and we're going to put blades around all 4 sides of this piece here. And then once we've got those in, we're just going to add an additional one on the ends, just like that. And then lastly, we're going to put a smaller rustic thin floor, which is the thin floor 1. And we're going to add just a tad bit more length to the ends of these. Now, if you like the look of this, you can keep it like that now, but what I do is I grab the Rustic Thin Floor 4 and I'm gonna snap this in on the outside edge here, and we're just gonna simply nudge it until you reach the top edge, and we're gonna put one more like that. And then we're gonna add additional width to each blade. Now, the important thing though too to get the right aesthetic is you don't want to have these on the same side. So for example, I have both of these on the inside of the blades. We want to continue this pattern on the outside of the blade, and it gives it a really nice touch in my opinion. So we're going to go around and continue to do that on the inner side of each one of these blades. So again, nudge it all the way to the bottom and then just snap a second one in and do it on all 4 of them. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more tutorials from me, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss another video from me again. I put out weekly content on LEGO Fortnite and cover a variety of topics. So this is Haskins. I'm signing off. I will catch you all in the next one.